So strap yourself in this aspect because I'm a lot different than a lot of individuals in my path into sports journalism. So I spent 7.5 years in the Marines, and I got really sick in my last year with substance abuse, and I self-reported, um, and that was crazy. When I think back of it in 2012, I was just at the point I'd hurt my back really bad, and I started abusing painkillers. And then the whole opioid epidemic, everything that you've heard about it and what it is. I mean, it grabbed hold of me and it wrapped up my whole life for like a 3 month period where I went through like $24,000 in cash advances on my credit card on drugs, and hit it the whole time for my command. I was a sergeant at the time, to the point to where like everything was just going crazy around me. And I finally had a moment of clarity. And that's the thing about drug addiction, is that if you don't act in your moments of clarity, you're never going to be able to get the help that you need. Um, and I was blessed enough through the grace of God to be able to ask for help during that period, and completely take my will in my life at that point in time and just give it away. And I went to the hospital. They diagnosed me at the VA hospital. I was there for 2 weeks. They diagnosed me with a mental illness, something that I didn't know that I had been dealing with my entire life, but it explained a lot of things where I'd have like these epic rises where I'd be on top of the world, and then like these two different people, as far as my personality. And then I went to a dual diagnosis treatment center. And then while I was in treatment, they served me with, like they charged me with being late and like all the, talking back and like all the stuff that you can get in trouble for in the military. And I went through that entire process. I left the treatment and got involved with Narcotics Anonymous, a program much like AA.
Mm-hmm.
And those people saved my life, and I devoted my life to God. Now I know a lot of people have problems with the God aspect, but in our program, it's just something greater than yourself. And for me, that was Jesus, and I really fell onto that. And I had this overwhelming feeling that no matter what happens, with my career in the service, that I was going to be okay. So that process took about a year, or about 8 to 9 months, and they ended up dropping all the charges. I stayed clean and sober during that period of time, going to meetings. They have this thing where you go to like 90 meetings in 90 days. I did 6 months straight because things were going so well, and just learning how to be a human being again, without, being addicted to something that, took all my will to want to do anything good. So I was blessed. They dropped all the charges. I left honorably. And when I went to my transition classes, I went to a job fair, and I got a job with a grocery store company as an assistant manager, and that matched my pay as a sergeant. So I went from making 55K to making 55K, which was huge. And that's what brought me to Phoenix. And I did it for 2 years, and I loved the people. I had a huge team under me. I'm the grocery manager. I was making great money. By the time I left, I was making almost 70 with bonuses. But I wasn't fulfilled. Like I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. I had odd days off, and I did the math as far as the people around me. And not to be rude, but just the intelligent factor of like just feeling like I had way more to give, to be challenged every day than, the monotony of waking up, going to the store, and it was getting old in that regard. So I found out I was pregnant, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look for different jobs. And then I had put in my 2 weeks, and then found out that because like I had like when I was a kid and I got in trouble with misdemeanors, like I had a TS top secret security clearance option where I could get that in the military. So I had these clearances, but I had 2 misdemeanors for having a pack of smokes, or smoking pot with friends. So one of my friends was going to get in deep trouble, so I took the charge with him. So I had 2 misdemeanors. Well, I went to get that job, and now in Michigan, they've gotten rid of that because it's legal. They ended up rescinding the job offer, and then I found out it wasn't even on my permanent record. I just was too honest about what had happened. So then when I went for my 2 week notice, they're like, well, if you want your job that back, that you can come back in a year. So now I don't have a job, and then we go to a doctor's appointment, because we found out my wife was pregnant, and I get that phone call that I couldn't, that after my 2 weeks, I was going to have to wait to come back. And then we found out we're having a miscarriage, and I'm like crushed. And once again, I had that overwhelming feeling that everything was going to be okay, because I was already looking for jobs and these job offers were coming at me, but I didn't know if retail was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I called my sponsor and I was talking with him, and he's like, well, what do you love? I was like, I love sports. I was like, I love coaching football when I was in the Marine Corps. I coached at Mira Mesa High School in San Diego. I just, everything about, like, I'm in my phone all the time. Like, all I'm doing is following sports. I was like, I just, I really want to get paid for it. I was like, but there's not a lot of money in it. And so I don't know if that's something I want to do. He's like, listen, and he told me about doctors. He's like, listen, he's like, doctors go into the medical field and they do it for the money. And they say that, because he was being a counselor, they said 75% of medical malpractice, when they do all the questionnaires and all that stuff, they find out that these doctors go into medical for the money. He's like, so they go into something they don't love, and then they hate it, and bad stuff happens in their life. He's like, here's the deal. He's like, you can go into it. And he's like, and you can love it. He's like, chances are, if you love it, the money will come. But guess what? If the money doesn't, you still love it. So that prompted me to pick up the phone, and I called the Pat Tillman Veterans Center at Arizona State, and I gave the same type of spiel that I just gave you, with a lot more pathos, because at that point I was only sober for like 3.5 years. And the woman who was the veteran advocate at the time was like, where are you at? I was like, I'm living in Ahwatukee. She's like, well, I'm right down the street. Get here right now. And I was like, what? She's like, everything's going to be okay. She's like, just come to my office. So I come and I sit and I talk with her. And after we finished her, we got towards, 30 minutes in the conversation. She just looked at me and she's like, I promise you, everything's going to be okay. She's like, you don't know this. And I didn't know Cronkite. I didn't know this and the other. She's like, we have this great journalism school here. She's like, we have this, and this. And she's like, I can see you going far. So then more adversity. Like, I had 12 credit hours from Eastern Michigan. So I was a 1.9 student in high school. So I didn't have the GPA to get into ASU. You needed a 2.0, and you had to have 24 credit hours. She's like, listen, don't let this deter you. She's like, you're going to work here for me as a work study, and you're going to go to Chandler Gilbert Community College. And then you're going to come here and you're going to do your homework, and then you're going to go home, but you're going to be with us. And she's like, we're going to make sure you're okay. And I was like, okay. So I took 19 credit hours there, killed it in a semester, came over to Cronkite, and then everything just started to like really unfold in front of me as far as sports journalism, and really, knowing that this was the place that, no matter what, even if the money wasn't there, I was going to be happy. I got involved further with the Tillman Center. She had left to another job. Somebody else took over, but me and another guy who was at the Tillman Center, we hooked up and we created what was called the Engagement and Innovation Team. There's only 2 of us, and 2 students and him. And we think tanked, like Seth Godin, Simon Sinek, like me learning how to, like, purple cow is what they call it. And like, just put all these thoughts on notepads in this room, and like what we wanted to do. And it eventually, the next semester, it turned into the veteran outreach team. And the ideas that we came up in these rooms were like calling veterans within the first couple months of them starting at ASU. So it's not just the paperwork thing and they're gone. I had experienced somebody committing suicide in my network from when I was going to Chandler Gilbert. That was an engineering student, a veteran. So all of these stuff was premised off of, love and compassion and figuring out how we can engage. And that kind of took off in its own regard. And he comes to me one day and he's like, hey, I was talking with my fiance, and she was big time in NPR, and she was like, why don't you do a radio show? So that prompted a podcast called Veteran Diaries, who I ended up handing off to another veteran who turned it into an IBS award-winning show. And where I would sit down with veterans, dependents, people in the community, and talk with them for an hour about their experience, like I was getting from the rooms, and just sharing that. And then in the sports world, what it did is it allowed me to plug into Blaze Radio, then become an assistant director there of sports, doing play-by-play calls, not as much as I wanted to, but with Pac-12 Network, and then also Blaze Radio. And then in Cronkite, doing the reporting for the Sports Bureau, and reporting for the Rockies, for the Denver Post, doing broadcast stuff for them during spring training. And I was really feeling this love. And then this same guy goes, "What do you think about grad school?" And I was like, I was just trying to graduate. Like I was, being a 1.9 student in high school, this wasn't like a part. He's like, "Listen," he's like, "your GPA," he's like, "you can go to any school in the country." And I was like, well, I've never even thought of it like that. So I applied to one school. It was Northwestern. After I did fact finding with Cronkite, I couldn't turn my degree into a 4+1. And they wanted me to take a GRE in order to get into the grad program, which is that placement test. And I didn't have time to study for it based on having a family. So at this point, I married my wife. We had a baby. My first semester into Cronkite, we had this kid, Guinevere, who's 4 now. And it's just insane. So having that extra time to study for something like that, it didn't seem it. And Northwestern had a GPA waiver. So I was like, all right, this is it. I'll just fire one application out and see where it goes. And next thing you know, I have Jay Adonde calling me. And he's like, "This is Jay Adonde." I'm like, oh. And I remember when he called me, I just kind of froze and, give him a lot of what I talked to you about, because I'm not afraid to share my story. And a lot of that is predicated on the fact that all those people that helped me in my first few years of recovery, how am I really honoring them and people that could possibly, need to talk to me about something as, as sensitive as what I went through? How am I honoring them if I keep my story a secret? So I got in. I think I might have said yes to going to grad school before I fully had a full discussion with my wife what that would be. We talked, but it wasn't nearly as in depth as we probably should have. But everything fell into place. We ended up in Chicago. My wife got a killer job downtown. She's in property management. She ran a high-rise, brand new, skyscraper down there, making big bucks. And we were able to make it through that year of grad school. And then through the aspect of networking, which I hope we talk just a little bit more of. Me, you asked how I navigated. The truth was, I was a grown man going to college. I didn't need to party. I didn't need to do all these things. I treated school like my job. So everything was about getting, I showed up like, this is about as dressed down as I get right now. You're catching me like khakis, dress shirt. Like I show up to Fox Sports like that. And my boss is like, chill. But my networking through there, I had some amazing people. Mark Rita, who's a former producer for Fox Sports Arizona, he was a professor. And then I had Josh Rawich, who's director. Probably going to mess this up because they all have different titles, but I believe he's VP of communications for the Diamondbacks. So he runs the communications department there. Josh is a huge mentor in my life, where we check in and we talk just about life and how things are going. And at this point, I was reporting my enterprise, and I had offers all over the country to go do broadcast sports, but I knew what that would mean for my family if my wife couldn't get a decent job. And we had this beautiful house here in Gilbert, blessed enough to be adulting on the level of, VA loans, you get a 0%. And in 16, we got an awesome 2,000 square foot home with a pool, and my mortgage is $1,400 a month, which is about as much as we were paying for a 2-bedroom apartment. So we had this here that we were renting. So we had this, what I realized when I was job hunting was that where was my network at, and where was the people that I knew? And I had done so much networking here in the Valley that I started when I had these offers and all these question marks everywhere else. I called back and I'm talking with Josh, and he's like, listen, he's like, if you get back here, he's like, I guarantee we'll get you a job. He's like, we're not hiring again until November. He's like, you would have to go through the internship process like everybody else. And he's like, I'm not saying you're going to get the job. He's like, but I'll make sure that you at least get in a room to talk to somebody. And he's like, anything else you need, he's like, what do you want to do? And I told him, and he immediately sent emails out to 98.7, to Fox Sports Arizona, and then to his people. So like right after I got off the phone, he's already working for me, like trying to figure this out. And I just had this overwhelming sense that it was going to be okay. Like I talked to you before, that no matter what, everything was going to be all right. So we came back, and during this process, and I kind of skipped over, I became, when my wife had the miscarriage, I had gone home, and I had applied for my disability through the VA, and I thought I was going to get like 60%. And what that means is that you get paid and you get free medical based on what your disabilities are. Well, when I had gone home, I went to my mailbox and ended up becoming a 100% disabled veteran, which allowed me to have like a military retirement and have all my benefits and all the things that I was worried about, not being able to pay for medically taken care of. So that has also stabilized us through this whole process. So I was able to come back, and I knew that it could be, and I told my wife, I was like, it could be 6 months until I get a job. And I was miserable coming back in 2000, the summer of 2019. So I graduated with the grad degree. Miserable for 2 months. I mean, and that's not even a long time. School Space Media is who I do play-by-play for here for high school to keep my reps up across all high school sports. I started selling advertisement for them just to stay busy. And then my networking, I became close with Darren Sutton, who's a former voice of the Diamondbacks, through working Perfect Game stuff, which was in my network through Mark Rita, who hooked me up with him. And then next thing you know, he's like, I don't have anything. I may have this fall league thing coming up. He's like, stay in contact. And that's my advice, is that if you have people in your network that you're not best friends with, and you think they can be a part of your life and helping you, my rule is check in every 2 weeks, because it's not every week. And if you commit to 2 weeks, you're going to forget. It'll slide to 3 weeks sometimes, maybe a month, but at least you're keeping that constant contact. And then I was doing that with him. And then I saw this posting online for Fox Sports Arizona, and I had hit up the communications director there, Brett Hansen, and I was like, hey, is this real or is this an old one that was on there? And he's like, it's an old one. And I was like, man. And then I get a phone call from Sutton, and Sutton's like, hey, do you want to come work with me for Fall League? And I was like, absolutely. He's like, I got something for you. He's like, you can be our producer in the truck who's TDing and directing, and doing both of them, switching the cameras, and then you can take care of my teams. And then when I have non-availability, he's like, you can be talent. And I was like, oh, all right, sign me up. So I went and did that, which was a great gig. He paid me great while I was doing it. And I got to work for MLB Play Ball. I got to do sideline reporting for the championship game, and do some great stuff. And then right about 3 weeks into Fall League, before some of the talent stuff happened, I get a phone call from Fox Sports Arizona. And it's Brett. He's like, hey, there's an opening. You need to apply. And sure enough, I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to have to give this up because I'm going there. But then I sit through the interviews with them, and they're amazing. And they're like, listen, we work with you guys. You're on the lowest level. Everybody has kind of side gigs. So whatever you need to be able to continue doing that. He's like, we'll work your schedule around that. And that's what kind of launched me at Fox Sports Arizona. They're very blunt with me about, listen, you're not going to be on TV, which is my overall goal, is to do something like Todd Walsh and to be, Todd one day, not today, not anytime in the next couple of years, but that's my end goal. Is if I'm not on the sideline being a reporter for a team, then I want to be the voice of the team. So that's why I stay plugged in with play-by-play. And through all of this, it has been me continuing to be involved with recovery. As life has gotten busier with family and stuff, it's not every day, but I still have contact. Some of my best friends are in the program. And it's just this giving grace to my Lord and Savior. And and I do understand that it's tough for people who don't have, they're not strong with the religion, or that's not where their beliefs lie, to hear that. And my response to that is, my pride for my faith, but also knowing that, I'm there, on a whole different level, that it doesn't have to be about God. It doesn't have to be about these things, but know that, when I talk with people that I mentee, that if you want what I have, this is how I did it. So it's going to be a part of my life. So, I have no regrets in that regard, as far as evangelizing. I don't press hard, but faith is a part of my life, and it is the cornerstone of what has got me to where I am now.